Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. This is one of my favorite times of year.
What is?
This year, right now. What we're doing.
When we're hanging out?
Pietze and Jonny on the episodes, having a bunch of conversations with them, talking about things that could change the world. You guys
Pietze and Jonny season.
Things that can change the world.
I love that in your mind this has become like a seasonal thing because we do it every summer. So now it's like that's
It's
the
a thing.
season for it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It should be the season for it. 'Tis the season. Well, if you don't know who they are, they're our best friends. I've known Pietze since I was 7. And we've mostly practiced a lot of different kinds of emotional health with each other until we finally landed and being less crazy.
Been through all the messy things.
We've been through a lot of messy things.
Oh, a lot of messy things. All
And
the messy.
me and her created a course called The Pathway to Freedom. And it is a course that really just breaks down. People are so overwhelmed at how to handle emotions, what to do with them, how to work through stuff in relationships. This is just the core foundation you need. You need to learn how to do conflict well. You need to learn how to connect well. You need to learn how to process through your feelings well. This course just breaks it down very, very simply. Everybody says it's so practical. It's so simple. And by the end, you really feel like you've caught something. But so we did that course. It changed our lives, as in like the concepts have continued to change our lives. And so that course we're about to run, we run it once a year. This is the last time we'll run Pathway to Freedom in 2023. So this is your last chance to run after it and get some goodness. So go to Justin and Abby, that's ABI.com.
Yeah. And class starts August 16th. So best get in there real quick.
You got to
get
do it
signed
fast.
up for it.
Fast.
Jump into our immersion program. That's our, there's a base course in our immersion program. That's where community happens. That's where relationships get fostered. And that's
And
where
you get way more content.
Yeah, you get to experience practical live transformation and connect points.
Me, Pietze, and Jonny all lead live meetings. And
They're
we give
so great.
They're
so
so
much
good.
freebies away in that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Big deal.
And the breakthrough.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, you've been hearing about it before from us. Applications are still happening for our Life Consulting Masterclass. That's a 10-month course. And that's where you can learn how to become a life consultant, or you can just get like an
Massive life transformation.
change. Yeah. And healing inside of that. So there are applications there. If you want to be part of that, you need to sign up for the Pathway to Freedom. And if you get accepted, you can apply what you paid for the Pathway Freedom to the cost of the Life Consulting Masterclass. So, and I almost forgot to mention, people have been asking us, what's it practically like to be an LCMC? And so recently we did a mini conference on validation. And in one of our sessions, we had some incredible encounters, and there was a lot of wonderful information that was deposited. And we thought, hey, you know what? We're going to make this specific session available for free for anyone who wants to get a deeper feeling for what LCMC is. You can click on the link in the description of this episode, and you'll be able to get that session for free. And you can watch it, have your own personal experience with it, and get some profound information out of our validation session from that mini conference. With that said, we're gonna dive into an episode that I think affects everyone. Abby and I have had conversations about her health. She shared about some of her health journey. It's something that, especially as humans and Americans, we all are struggling with health issues.
Yeah.
To some level or another, and especially those that we care about are struggling with big ones. So there's a lot of us, we've all experienced that feeling of being really out of control, not only in our own bodies, but watching someone else's body that we love go through something. And so this is a conversation we're going to jump into because Pietze's had her own struggles inside of her health, and Jonny's going to open up about his experience, and she's going to open up about hers. But this is meant to be a relatable episode that brings encouragement and helps you to feel validated and identify with some of the process when we get into those areas of stuff.
And honestly, whether or not you have sickness or you know somebody who's sick, we're really talking through the process of how do you recognize what your triggers are and how that's affecting the people around you.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
the basic. Like whether or not you care about me or Pietze's health journeys, you don't have to be cold.
Don't care. We don't need your sympathy.
But you might want to listen to this because it's a good practical on how to unwind. Pietze and Jonny were pretty gridlocked in this area. They just triggered
Just a little. Just a little.
for,
tiny bit.
I would say, like a good 15 years of their marriage.
Just a smidge.
Just a smidge. But
Well, I think
they've
it's a
really
really
had
complicated space.
Yeah,
Like
jump
this is even the topic. I can imagine people who are turning on the episode right now. I'm sure there are people who are already triggered because this specific, concept, living with somebody who has sickness or like chronic sickness, chronic pain, or being somebody who has chronic pain, living inside that experience is a very complex thing. There's so much that's out of your control. There's so much relationally that you can feel victim to, So I think that I feel really, really excited to dig into this. It's something that almost everyone I know, like you said, is struggling with,
Or connected to in some way.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just talk about it. Pietze,
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
why did you have to have
Let's talk
issues?
about it. I don't know. I keep asking my
Well,
therapist that.
Can I
He
just
hasn't answered yet, so I feel like I'm wasting my money.
can I start
I'm
with
sure your
with one
therapist
thing?
actually has lots of answers. This from your childhood, this from your childhood.
100%.
What were you going to say,
think-
Jonny?
I think the starting point for me, this is kind of at the formation of Pathways when Pietze and Abby started delving into those concepts. We were in a season where Pietze was really sick. We just had 2 kids, and that really messed up her body. And for me, there was a moment where I realized that every time she was sick, I was an absolute jerk to her.
Yeah.
And if you knew me, you would know that I'm not that kind of guy.
No.
Right. And I think there's a wake up call that happened with me of like, what do I do about this? Because I cannot force her body to stop being sick. And that's where the journey started for me is where it starts is looking at why is my experience of this so bad? Right. If you can't change the situation, then the question is, can I change my experience of the situation?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Can I change my day-to-day experience of this thing that I cannot change?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it started for us is recognizing, and we've said this before on the podcast, but recognizing when we can't make any practical changes in our life, we have to change ourselves. We have to look at why it is that this experience is so horrible and what do we do about it?
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of humility in it for me, because she would tell me, she has migraines, she has chronic migraines, and she would tell me about her experience of me. And I didn't want to look at it because I felt so overwhelmed with the caretaking aspect of the kids and her sickness.
Yeah.
That I didn't have capacity to look at myself and say I could be doing better. Right. I just wanted to be enough in that moment. And there's a humility that had to come where I recognized, no, I actually want to be soft with you, but I'm not. And there's a block, So I think starting with just assessing where you're at. Okay. What is the situation in which we have landed? What is the reality of it? Let's just look at it. And then where are the blocks? Is there something that is a continuous pattern that inside of this relationship, if you're in relationship with somebody with sickness, is there something that is a continuous roadblock that we keep hitting? And if so, what is that tied to?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the journey that we went on together.
Yeah.
What can you guys just describe? It's interesting because I would say the same thing for me and Justin. Like the roadblocks we used to hit around sickness, there was a lot of things that had nothing to do with sickness. And it's so easy when there is something that's so horrible and so hard, it's easy to really get consumed with that thing and blame that thing. So for a long time, sickness was the villain that was ruining our relationship. And it was creating disconnection between me and Justin, where once we learn tools, there's actually a lot of things that were our own triggers showing up that is what created the disconnection. And as we've sorted those, like I would say the past month, I've had such bad health issues, maybe like some of the worst. And we have been the most connected and the most regulated we've ever been.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
that's
it's
so good.
It's because we have paired off the things that had nothing to do with sickness. But it's so easy when you have a hard thing, it's just really easy to want to blame that for all of the shit.
Oh, I think of course, because, you know, you think, man, it's such a big stressor on marriages and family, you know, and so it's easy for that for all the blame to go there, you know, and for me, like, you know, I've had chronic migraines my whole life. Like they're genetic in my family. I remember being like 10 years old and crying in the middle of the night with like a horrible migraine, like when they first started, you know? But after I gave birth to our son, my body just took a complete nosedive and never came back. And
it was like 3 or 4 months that you had a migraine every day, right? Like
yeah, I think it was
there.
like 4 months, like starting the morning, sometimes almost every morning throwing up because I was in so much pain.
And then it improved to 4 days a week.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it was a long season of.
It was such a long season, and it was, you know, it was devastating because I have really hard pregnancies, and so having a baby for me is like huge relief. But then my health completely, you know, nosedived, and, you know, there was grief that came from feeling like I was missing my son's childhood. And then Jonny, this is around the time, if you know our story, that he was coming off the road. And we were going through huge marriage stuff during that time, which is probably part of what played into
why
all
you
of
kept
it.
having migraines.
Yes, exactly. There, you know, there's no trauma there, but you know, it was for me devastating to watch that I'm supposed to be the mom. I'm supposed to be the partner helping him. And now I've suddenly become a burden to him. I've become a burden to, this is how it felt. I've become a burden to my family. I can't take care of my kids.
Yeah.
I can't, you know, it felt like a very hopeless place and a place that it was hard not to go, oh, this sickness, this is ruining everything for us. This is, you know, and you know, obviously we can't invalidate sickness.
No, it also was ruining everything. It's both.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you know, somebody were to say to Abby, can you imagine your life without chronic sickness? You know, it'd be like, whoa.
It'd be so much better.
Yeah, that would be a crazy experience, you know? And so it's not to invalidate that wasn't a huge factor, but what made there become trauma and suffering around it was our experience of it, which was tied to our beliefs and tied to our resistance to it.
Yeah.
You know, because neither one of us wanted to accept that it was happening. So we both just lived in long-term resistance towards it, which created a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
You know? Well,
yeah. So what would you say, like, was your journey to uncovering your belief? Because you were just talking about how you felt a lot of guilt towards the family, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, what was interesting is like any time that Jonny would, you know, come into the room, he for a long time woke up every morning with our kids because I couldn't get out of bed early. Yep. So he would work late.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be easy to go, wow, what a jerk being an asshole to his wife while she's sick and she can't help it. But you have to put him
4 or 5 hours of sleep at night.
You have to put him in context to understand why he was getting, because that's not his nature. Nature, he's a very kind person. His nature is not to be a jerk. You know, at this point, he was working crazy hours. So he would stay up late working.
And then have to get up early with the kids.
So he would come in, see that I wasn't doing well, that I couldn't get out of bed, and he would immediately trigger and get irritated and frustrated, sometimes just walk straight out of the room.
He was out of his window of tolerance. He was not
Yeah.
in the green zone in
He
life.
was not in the green zone at all.
Yep.
And one thing that I will note in that, and this is where, victim mentality plays such a huge role in this whole conversation, both on the side of the person who has sickness and on the side of the person who's in a relationship with them.
Yes.
But what she just said, I used as an excuse to not look at the way I was showing up for
You're
years.
like, I am
right?
stressed. I'm past my capacity. I'm doing so much.
Yes. Because, like, for instance, if she was sick, what that meant was that I had to watch both kids and work at the same time.
Which is a lot.
And in my mind, that was enough cause for me to be pissed off
Mhm.
and that she should just deal with the fact that I'm not upset at her and be okay with the fact that I'm pissed off.
Totally.
Which I love that you're highlighting this, because this will be a universal thing for anyone that's had these types of experiences, because there's going to be some sort of justification,
Mhm.
like current justification sitting right in front of them. And what you're saying is like, yeah, that does play a role. However, there's a big thing exacerbating the entirety of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's a thought process. I'm sure you've had to walk through this as well, Justin, but of what kind of person do I want to be?
Yes.
Because even if there's a reason, right? There's a reason that my kids make me mad,
Mhm.
but do I
Yeah.
want to be an angry dad? No, I don't want to be an angry dad,
Right.
right?
Which is the difference
And-
between reasonable and justifiable. Reasonable says
Right.
there's a reason behind this. Justifiable says I have permission to get away with this just because.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me
Oh,
about
yeah.
your beliefs around like why you were a disappointment to us as a family.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think for me, when I would wake up in the morning, immediately I would be flooded with tons of guilt and tons of shame that I
Yeah.
was sick.
So you
That would
instantly were dysregulated. You
Immediately,
instantly
when I would
were
wake up-
extra sensitive, extra fragile.
Oh, 100%. And, you're trying to process your emotions through feeling like you're being hit over the head with a hammer repeatedly to the point where you feel
Yeah.
nauseous, So
Yeah.
it was hard to process. And it was hard sometimes for me to differentiate. Like, is this what's physical and what's affecting my emotions?
Mhm.
But I knew that I would immediately feel tons of shame, tons of guilt. That would result in me having tons of anxiety because now I know that he's going to be frustrated.
Mhm.
It's going to add more to his plate, which makes me
Mhm.
feel more
even
like
more
a failure.
guilty. Mm-hmm.
And then I come into the room and just confirm all of that to her,
Mm-hmm.
not intentionally, but all of that is being confirmed through my behavior from my own beliefs and my own triggers.
Right.
Yeah. So then when he would walk in the room, I would just kind of spiral into shutdown mode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't get defensive or anything. Usually I would just spiral in,
Yeah.
completely shut down because I would go into freeze because now I have this confirmation bias going
Mhm. That you
where
are
I'm like,
ruining your
okay,
family.
I
You
feel
are
like a
burden.
freaking failure of a wife and a mom. And you've just completely confirmed it
Yeah.
to me, and to the point where, I think if you've been in chronic pain or sickness for a while, I think you can relate to this, but it's really easy to go into suicidal ideation at times
Mhm.
Totally.
because especially when you feel like a failure of a person,
Mhm.
you feel like you can't do life. You feel like at times, and that you're a burden. At times you felt like you were a burden to
Sure.
your family and you can't make the pain stop. You feel trapped.
Totally.
And so it's easy to spiral into deep hopelessness.
Yeah.
It's easy to go, why am I even here? What's the point of existing?
Mhm.
And it did get bad like that at times. But one of the things, so I started to really understand that every time that I would spiral in this, that I wasn't able to actually see where he was coming from
Mm.
and see him and have compassion on him because I felt so much shame that I would just shut
Mhm.
down.
Yeah.
Mm.
Or sometimes I would get upset and start crying and be like, I can't handle this, which is
Yeah.
fair and valid. Or like be upset, like, why are you treating me like this? Very
Right.
fair and valid. But also I still wasn't seeing him and his
Totally.
experience
Yep.
of what was happening. And he desperately needed compassion.
Mhm.
He needed my support in the way that I could give it.
Yep.
That's actually what he needed. He didn't need me to get up. Now, that would have been nice, obviously, practically, but it wasn't practical that I could get up and just take care of the kids. But what I could have given him in that season was like, hey, I see you. I'm here for you. Even if you need to be I will be a safe place for you because I'm not blaming myself in this.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
You know,
I want to add something to that, even in our own journey. One of the things that Abby did was, I think, a little bit the opposite of you, which she was like, I would rather hear, like, tell me, like, I want to know what your emotions are, where she was able to engage it. However, I felt
because
like,
I thought the one thing I can give you, I can't give you anything, but the one thing I can give you is to validate it. Is
Yes.
what I thought. I have power to do that. I can say, it is hard being married to somebody who's sick. It is hard having to do everything. It is hard that I'm like your kid right now instead of your partner. So I wanted to be able to do that.
Whereas me on my end, I was like, I can't talk about this. I feel bad having bad emotions because, or having some sort of emotional need here inside of this space because she already can't take it. She's already going through hell as it is.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes I was internalizing that and just carrying the brunt of that and feeling a lot of anxiety with it. And it was so relieving and connecting when I could cross over my barrier on my end and go, all right, I'm going to accept the gift that you have to give, your capacity that you do have, and I'm going to let you in on this. Because what it really did is it left us in deeper connection because I felt seen and validated, and she felt not alone inside of the sickness process.
And like I had something to contribute.
Right.
Because when you're sick, you feel like you have nothing to offer.
Yeah.
And so even if the thing that I have to offer is just to tell you how lonely it would feel for you that I have nothing to offer, I am getting to feel a sense of like I'm contributing and I'm connecting and we still have a bond and we're still seeing each other. But I was thinking both of you, kind of the way you described processing it is both such a child. Like I could hear your little kids showing up. Like
Totally.
Pietze's little kid is over here being like, oh no, I must not be doing it right. Oh no, I'm a burden. I need to be less of a burden. And then you have Justin over here that's like, actually very similar. Like, I don't want to be a burden to you.
Yeah.
You can't handle it. You don't have any capacity. I need to be the parent. I need to. And so you can hear both of your like little kids showing up in how they interacted it in their childhood.
And what's interesting about that is because for me, a big turning point was recognizing the reason, like, again, the reason that I showed up that way and the reason I would go into my little kid that way is because I actually had a deep belief that I was guarding. And that deep belief came from my mom, which is my family is Dutch and Dutch women are known to be very feisty, very strong. Like they are the strong ones in the relationship typically. Like just stereotypically. I don't think that that's across the board, but just that's what the Dutch are known for, these very strong women. And I just come from a long line of strong women. And there's this belief that like you should not be weak. And my mom carried that belief and then had a sick body. And I watched her be tortured. And I watched her feel so much shame when she couldn't parent, when she couldn't show up because of her body. And so immediately I consumed that belief. That became my belief. I'm only as good as what I can do. And so every experience got filtered through, am I weak or not in this? Am I weak? And, I'm so weak. Well, that's shameful. And so I couldn't sit with myself in compassion because that belief, and really that took a while to uncover. Was recognizing, really going into those triggered moments and going, whoa, there is a deep belief here that is pushing the narrative that is causing so much trauma around this.
Yeah. Well, and I think another component that I think is very relatable for a lot of people in this situation is the fact that from the outside looking in, it looks like I'm a rock star. It looks like I'm the best person in the world, right? Because I am waking up with the kids and I am doing the grocery shopping and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm working 70 hours a week. Right. And so there can be a dynamic even at play where
everybody
that shame
else
gets multiplied because of the way that you, like if you are somebody who struggles with chronic sickness, the way that you feel like everybody else is perceiving the situation, it multiplies.
Yeah. And sometimes it is even actual perception. Like sometimes people would go up to Jonny and be like, wow, you do so much. And so it would
confirming to me what I believed and confirming to her what she believed.
Yes.
Right. confirming to me that I'm a victim and that I'm just the best person in the whole world and
Yep.
that she has no excuse to be upset with me.
Yeah.
Right now, they're not saying that,
Sure.
but that's what my mind is interpreting.
Yes.
Right. Like, of course, they're right. I am the best and she has no reason to complain. Right. Because everybody keeps telling me how great of a job I'm doing. Now, they're just trying to be encouraging, obviously.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. But it's not helping the dynamic.
Yeah.
between
And
us.
it didn't. It masked it for a long time. But I think, as we started to, and this all centered around like when we were developing pathways and we started to, work through our marriage issues, we knew that we had to tackle this issue and we had to go on that journey separately. And then we came together and were able to share from a place of like, this was the belief that I was bringing to the table that actually kept me from bringing love and connection to you in this, And so
What
like,
did you
should
recognize, Jonny?
Well, yeah. I mean, this whole thing has been a huge journey for me, and it still is, right?
Yeah.
Like, still to this day, when Pietze gets a migraine, and
Your
I
body
have
gets
to go up
flooded.
and bring her toast or
Yep.
whatever, I have to take a deep breath and calm down my inner kid.
Mhm.
I think that the starting point for me, and I think this should be the starting point for anybody, is looking at your past and asking yourself, is this triggering anything?
Right.
Because most of us had a sick mom or a sick dad or somebody in our life
or a sick
that we
sibling.
took care of,
Yep.
right? Somebody who relied on us really heavily or something. Maybe not everybody,
Sure.
but I think if you have something in your past that feels related, you would be a fool to not investigate it deeper.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
And so for me, I had a moment where I realized, oh, I think this is hitting my little boy internally. I think this is hitting the thing inside of me that feels like, from childhood, my mom was sick a lot, no fault of her own.
Yeah.
Right. My dad worked, he was out of the house, very
Yeah.
normal house situation. And as a result, I helped out a lot.
Yep.
On the surface, nothing wrong with that
Totally.
situation, but you end up married and you've got 2 kids and your wife's in bed. And all of a sudden that little boy who was scared when he was 5 or 6 years old, who
Yeah.
felt like he didn't know what to do, who
Yeah.
felt like this situation, like, is mom going to die? Is she going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? I need to take care of her. That feels like a really weird reversal of roles, not even because it's intentional, but because it's just what's happening. Right. And so I think for me, the beginning of everything was doing a deep dive on my own beliefs about it and uncovering the fact that every time she's sick, that little boy is showing up. That was the starting point. From that,
instantly,
ahead.
before you go into that, it instantly starts to give you compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Knowing your
Totally.
story.
And you have, knowing your story, you can have compassion for yourself, which can give you, then you have more compassion in your bank account.
Yeah.
When you have compassion for why something is hard for you, oh, of course this is hard. My little boy's showing up. And then you have more understanding to be able to give to your partner. So then where did that lead?
Well, and I will say on compassion, we were talking about this before the episode. And the main thing of this whole episode is compassion and empathy, both for yourself and for the other person.
I love that.
At the end of the day, that's what it all boils down to, is figuring out how to have compassion on yourself and empathy for the other person.
Yeah.
But for me, I was able to not just connect to the fact that I had a mom who was sick and leave it there, but I went after, what is the lie? What is the belief under the surface that I'm believing? And I actually had a similar belief that Pietze had, which is that weakness is bad. Weakness is inherently wrong. Sickness is bad. These things, like, I'm a go-getter. I want to conquer the world. I want to do all these things. And so, for me, the way that translated is not in judgment towards her, even though that was a part of it, right? I would get triggered by her. But a big part of it was what Justin was saying, which is I took on a very robotic approach to myself. I have to do everything. I have to carry everything. And so when she would go into sickness, I would immediately go into robot mode.
Yes.
Heart is shut off.
Yep.
Relationship circuits are shut off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Connection is shut off. There's no attachment, which is really scary for her. That's what she's feeling.
Like
And
all
I'm
warmth just got removed.
Yes. And so I'm going into just survival mode because
Yep.
now I'm like, okay, I've got to get the kids to school. I've got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. And really, in that, the problem with that, and I don't know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Justin, but the problem with staying in that mentality of I can't have needs because this person is taking up all of the oxygen in the room with their needs.
Yep.
That feeling very quickly goes down the road into resentment
And blame.
Yeah. I don't know if it was that way for you, but for me, it became the kind of thing where I felt trapped by her sickness and by my kids.
Yeah.
So not because I didn't love them,
No.
but just simply because
You're out of control.
I felt like it was the honorable thing to take care of them and to do the best job possible, and that there was no space in life for me to be a human.
Yep.
Or to have boundaries.
And you
Or to have
can't
needs.
shut down your humanity
Yeah.
and keep your humanity turned on towards your wife in a way that feels safe and loving, right?
Totally.
Like they go hand in hand.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that
I think you were like that when we first got married.
Yeah, I will inject into that conversation right there. So when we first got married, so my mom was chronically sick with migraines as a kid, and then she came out of that and she ended up hurting her back, working manual labor at my dad's electrical contracting business. And what I did observe is that during the migraine season, would melt down and be left in bed all day.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out well for her. And there was a determination that I'm not going to do that on her end.
Yeah.
Then when she got her back situation, she wouldn't lay down ever.
Right.
And there
Because she
was-
went into deep depression when
Right.
she was laying down all the time. She's
Which
like,
makes
I'll
total
never do that
sense.
again. So now she's
Yeah.
injured and she's like, I'll never lay down.
Right. And so there's a chronic pain that I watch now as she's pushing through it consistently. And so the thing that forms inside of our household is, for me, is this experience of there's no room to have sickness. Sickness isn't something that should limit you whatsoever. And so it was, come on, push through this was a concept. So I come into marriage and two things are equally blowing up in my face at the same time. One is an extreme fear, right, of mom who got crippled in bed and watching Abby, and I'm like, anxiety's blowing through the roof inside of me, like, oh no, it's all happening, everything's falling apart, I'm going to be all alone, because I felt very alone. And I also, there was a lot of negative emotions that came out of my mom in her pain of the situation, which is understandably so as an adult. I get it, like, but I'm like, oh no, now I'm going to have like a worse experience because her pain is going to get turned on me. Right. And there are moments where Abby did legitimately looking for me to solve the problem so I'm living that part of my trauma. Then I'm living the other expression of, dude, you can get through this. Like your body shouldn't be able to stop you. I have examples of your body not stopping you.
Right.
So he had a lot of judgment in some areas.
So there was early on, there was a lack of compassion in some ways. Then there was a ton of compassion as I'm trying to serve her and take care of her, and panic all mixed into all of it.
Right.
And so there was varying levels of bitterness and resentment or blame, but ultimately, like, I think where the blame most was like, you're sick and that's going to cause us a bunch of pain inside of this marriage that I am powerless to resolving, but I'm going to be expected to resolve. And that's usually where that came in for me, I think.
Well, and it was hard. We did the same thing where we confirmed each other's deepest fears, which was like, Justin was like, I'm afraid you will never do anything with your life. And I was like, I'm already terrified I will never do anything with my life.
Now you're just confirming it to me.
Yes. What I need is for somebody that's like, we're going to overcome this. We're going to make it through this. Because why?
Yes.
What I really need is a parent. Like, that's my little girl wanted a parent that'd say, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. We're going to make it through this. And I think sickness immediately takes us to our most powerless state.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think we instantly go to our little kids. And I think that's why being around somebody who's chronically sick can be hard, because they are often their most little kid, most dysregulated version of themselves. So for me, all I'm wanting is somebody to be like, you're okay. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're going to make it through this. Somebody who felt bigger than me that I could trust. And I had all these issues from my childhood about trusting people. And is there anybody bigger than me? And can anybody tell me I'm okay? That's my little girl.
Yeah.
And that's why right now our marriage is the best it's ever been, because now when my little girl shows up, I'm not asking Justin, can you be bigger than me? Am I going to be okay?
Yeah.
Am I going to make it? Or what are you going to do to help me research this? Or what are you going to do to help me?
Right.
Now it is a like, oh, my little girl is freaking out. She really needs to regulate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, my trigger point, just to kind of highlight this, was my little kid was screaming, I don't have the answers. I don't have the answers. And that would send me into such a powerless meltdown internally, where you talked about suicidal ideation. I felt heavy amounts of suicidal ideation when those would happen, because I was in that kid state where I felt the most abandonment and aloneness and powerlessness and inability, and I didn't know how to get out of it. And there was this idea of like, there's a cycle that I'm living in that will never be stopped, and I am just a passenger in a car wreck that's happening, and it's just going to affect my life. And so those are for me, I had to really start tending to that part of my kid self of being like, actually, we're a powerful adult, and actually we can have joy and peace and happiness. And even when things aren't fun, we can grieve, we can invite people into this situation. We are not alone. So ultimately, like, there was an intense amount of abandonment that would come up for that little kid inside of me.
And you actually started learning to, I would say me being really sick is one of the places you actually learned how to get out of abandonment. You actually learned to start reaching out. You learned to start calling people, like, and getting the support you needed, so that you were having things that were filling your bank account, so that you had something.
Yeah, very consistently.
Yeah.
And develop support and strength.
Well, and one component, and you kind of touched on this earlier, but like the projection into the future that can happen.
Oh, absolutely.
In these situations, can be really hopeless. And, I think there are many nuances. This is a very nuanced thing. But in that, one of the things is very much acceptance. When Pietze was really sick, I had gone from being a freelancer to trying to start my own video production company.
It's a lot of
difference. So we had just taken out a bunch of loans on gear. We are getting bigger contracts than big contracts with companies, not just little stuff here and there, but I'm doing these big video projects, and we're doing shoots and all this stuff, and trying to buy a house. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but when you're in a season where you can't change sickness, there is an acceptance of it that isn't projecting into the future, right? This is ruining all my hopes and dreams. What I hoped for my marriage will never happen. We're never going to accomplish anything. There's an element where you do actually have to accept that.
Yeah.
I can't change this sickness. And as a result of this sickness, we might not actually accomplish as much as we set out to accomplish.
100%.
Yeah.
Right, because when you're resisting that,
yes,
right. Once again, the difference between resistance and acceptance, the resistance is what causes the trauma in the situation. You can actually
really does perpetuate it.
But you have to start with what you said, Justin, which is grieving, right? Like, grieving is the starting point before you have to go through the steps of grieving to get to acceptance. You have to actually let yourself have compassion on how hard it is. Because we wanted to, it'd be very easy to do all 7 of the steps of grief with this and just run through them, and that'd be the whole podcast, right? There is denial that happens. There's anger that happens. There is so much going
Sadness
on,
that
right?
happens.
You have to let yourself wrestle with those emotions, but the goal you're trying to get to is acceptance. And part of that is actually releasing your raft into the rapids rather than trying to paddle upstream. Of saying, look, I have to just let this river take us where we go. If Pietze wakes up tomorrow with a migraine and I have to cancel my day of work, some things cannot be helped.
And it's you're talking about healthy surrender, not giving up, but surrendering to the experience. That acceptance is a sense of surrender inside of our soul that says, all right, this is where I'm at, and I cannot control this situation, but I can be an active participant. And what is the grace that I have in this moment to actively participate? And go ahead.
It's like the serenity prayer.
Totally.
Give me the grace to
your brain
to change the things I can and the grace to
accept
deal
what
with the things I can't
ex-
or whatever.
accept
I don't
what
know.
can't,
Accept what I can
and to know the difference.
difference. Yeah.
To all of you out there that know it really well,
We're
I'm sorry
sorry.
for the butchering of that.
But
Comment on Instagram and ridicule us for our lack of
Serenity
knowledge on
prayer
this
knowledge.
Serenity prayer.
but for me, this was a big thing. Like I remember sitting in my counselor's office processing this because I had always lived with denial. I'm just about ready to be better. I'm just about ready to be better. So when I was 37 and I was still sick, I was like, this is not the life I thought I was going to live. This is not not how I saw my life going.
Right.
And I just remember knowing I had to actually agree and like acknowledge what it is. Like, what is it? Like, no, actually what is it's gone on longer and it may go on longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the truth.
Yeah.
It is longer than I wanted and it may continue on. But the pivotal thing was when I let go of resisting, trying to paddle upstream, I thought, if I'm going to ride this river, how do I ride this river well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is where, so acceptance to me didn't become, I'm going to be sick the rest of my life.
No,
but
and it didn't become, I'm not a participant in trying to find solutions.
In
Yeah.
my healing.
Totally. I'm
Totally.
still doing both of those. However, there is a thing of like, okay, so what do I have control over? And what can I do? Oh, I can learn how to get more regulated in my body about sickness. I can learn how to, like right now, I've been retraining coming out of panic. When my symptoms get worse, my body naturally goes into panic. I'm retraining my body how to allow my symptoms to get worse and to be like, it's okay. You're going to be okay. Very similar to a cold plunge. Like, I know it feels like you're going to die, but you're actually
you're
not.
not dying.
That's real.
You're
You
going to
are
be
not
okay. But that's been like my little girl, her deepest cry my whole life is, am I going to be okay? So I'm
Right.
learning how to soothe her. So accepting sickness allowed me, instead of spending all of my energy resisting sickness, I now am spending my energy soothing my little girl and moving
Right.
with the river instead of
and then
against
you
it.
become powerful in the midst of the sickness in an entirely different way. And for me as well, that's part of my journey, is the soothing of that little boy inside, of like,
Right.
oh no, he's freaking out right now
Mhm.
because the situation's right in front of me. I can't necessarily change that, but what I can do is get some compassion in there. I can get some kindness in there. I can get some understanding of what's really going on. And I can begin to shift that. And part of that process of being able to do that has been learning how to live very much in the present. Like today,
Yeah.
this is the moment today. This day isn't going to be the same day every day.
Mhm.
So understanding the ebbs and flows.
Every
of
season changes.
Every season changes. And I can go, yeah, I do feel alone right now. I probably need to call a friend. I need to get myself out of the spin that's going on inside of me, because I've gotten lost in the future that doesn't have hope. I got lost in a future that doesn't have a good God that's involved inside of it. And I need to.
You got lost in the fear slide to hell.
Yeah, the fear slide to hell, as
The
Pietze
fear
said.
slide right into the red zone.
Yeah. But I'm getting myself right back into this present moment and saying, okay, how can I show up? I know right now I can go love her really well. I know that I can tend to myself really well right now. Those are two things that I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think, being present in the moment has been a big part of my journey as well. In this specific area, it's been huge for me. And I've heard people say that your experience of a moment is entirely in your mind.
Mm.
You know, like you can be in the line at Starbucks and the barista can be taking too long, and you don't have to experience the emotion of stress.
No, you don't.
It's stressful because in every movie since you were born, when you're in a line that's too long, it's stressful. And when you're in a line with your dad and it's too long, he gets stressed. And everything points to, this is a stressful moment. Your boss is going to be mad at you because you're late, all of these things. But the moment doesn't have to be stressful. You can sit there in Starbucks with a stupid barista who's taking way too long and making everybody's drinks wrong and be okay, right? Be at peace. Take a breath. I was in Starbucks the other day and I got triggered just because they remodeled it and made the lobby size smaller and there's not as many tables for people to sit at, and it's hard. I got so triggered. It's the stupidest thing, right? Your experience in a moment is determined by yourself. And I'm not saying some people in the church are going to hear this the wrong way.
Yeah.
But you can make friends even with chronic sickness. You can make friends. You can look at it and say, this can be a good day. When you wake up and your spouse
Right.
has to be in bed, you can actually go in and give her a kiss or give him a kiss and say, I love you. Do you need anything? And in your heart, not be self-abandoned because you have chosen that today is going to be a good day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right?
Which
There's
is
a
like, I'm
choice
not
internally.
giving my power over
Yes.
to this outside thing to decide how happy I get to be.
And it's not a detached from yourself. You can actually have a good day. You can actually
Mhm.
enjoy your day. It's
Mhm.
actually possible to enjoy your day.
Yeah.
You know, and I think for me in this, going down this journey, one of the big areas where I really went wrong and have had to clean up a lot of mess with Pietze is the fact that unsafety and disconnection became like the foundation of our relationship in that season.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
And it is really important if you are in a dynamic where one of you is sick and the other one is not, and there's
Mhm.
a caretaker role or anything like that. It's really important to recognize that both of you feel really unsafe
Mm-hmm.
and you actually need to create safety, even if you can't fix the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to find a way to reach out and say, hey, you matter to me. I love you. We're in this together. And I didn't do that, right? There's a lot of trauma that I've had to clean up from that very dynamic. And it's not because I'm a terrible person. It's not, but it's because safety matters.
Mm-hmm.
Connection matters. The feelings that the other person experiences when you walk in the room, that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that you can make them feel something, right? You
Sure.
can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah.
Right.
But in my heart, I have had to get to the point where I am not justifying all of my behavior, right? I woke up early with the kids. I have to do all these things. She should just put up with my bad mood because I'm taking care of her. I have had to get to the point where her experience of me matters really deeply.
Which again goes back to the statement, reasonable versus justifiable, right?
Right.
Where you're
Exactly.
like, there is an absolute reason for why I showed up this way.
Totally.
That's where compassion enters in.
Yes.
When we're in reasonableness, we're going, oh, this is there's something that exists here. I'm not going to discount it. I can apply compassion to it, and I cannot justify it. So this is where then ownership, compassion and ownership partner together inside of this scenario, because then I can go, okay, and it still wasn't fun. The experience of me wasn't fun for that person, and it matters to me. And that's an act of nuanced thinking versus black and white thinking, right?
Yes.
There's so much nuance inside of it where each of our experiences can matter instead of just one person's experience. Like either you're the problem or I'm the problem, or you know what, we both are having conditions that are very difficult for both of us. We've both affected each other, and here's what I can own inside of it while having compassion towards myself.
Yeah. Well, and really too for us, like, you know, for me, he came in with that kind of ownership, and for me, I was coming in with the ownership of I'm going to learn how to reparent myself and give my little girl compassion.
Yeah.
And as I'm able to lean in and give her compassion, then I feel safe. I grow myself up, is what I say. Through compassion, I grow myself up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get from
To
your
where
little girl
I'm
to
not
your
coming-
adult.
Yeah. I'm not coming into interactions like just take with my little girl. I'm coming in even regulated, being like, I don't feel good. I'm really sorry. That probably feels awful. Like, you know, not in a self-deprecating way, but in a way that like I can lean in and see him like, hey, is there anything that you need? And we had to have conversations where we shared our experience of each other. And Jonny would be like, when you're sick, it feels like there's a dark cloud over our house
Oh,
and over
that's
our
really
life.
true. I bet you feel that.
What, the dark cloud?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Justin's literally described it before.
Yeah.
Exact same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you had to
And-
have the shame resilience to be able to hear that and not decide
Yes.
you're bad.
Yeah. So I had to get rid of that belief, because had I not like gotten to my core belief and worked through it, that's part of what we teach in Pathways. It's a section of it. But had I not done that, everything would have been perceived through that belief, which then I couldn't have given myself compassion, because I'm already judging myself and shaming myself before he said a word.
Right.
You know, so taking care of that and being able to lean in compassion and heal that, you know, identified belief, you know, then when he could share something like, you know, when you're sick, like it feels like depression is resting over our house.
Yeah.
Like there's a dark cloud over our house. And say things like that to me, I didn't shame spiral. I could go, that makes a lot of sense. I can imagine that it feels that way. And that makes me really sad, you know? And as we began to heal that, it has now translated into now, if I wake up with a migraine, which, well, and I should back up a little bit and say, it made our threat response really high over my migraines.
Oh, totally. Because now you both are like, this is the bomb. If this
It's
happens,
a high stakes.
so now Jonny probably doesn't want you to do anything that could cause a migraine, and you don't want to do anything that could cause a migraine, and so you're probably like hyper vigilant, which actually keeps you stressed. Probably
well,
keeps
and
you in
not
a
just that,
migraine
there's so
cycle.
much emotional charge that if I get a migraine, it's the end of the world. So that fear then throws you into getting a migraine.
Yep.
That fear on his side that's building throws you into being dysregulated and depressed around it. And then now that's created a synapse in both of our brains where we go, oh, migraine, trauma. Migraine, avoid migraine. And all that does is keep you in a fear cycle around sickness. And part of even my physical healing has come through undoing that belief and taking the high stakes down and going, if I get a migraine, it's okay. And we'll be okay. And they come and they go and it's okay. And sometimes they bring up hard emotions and that's okay too, but we can work through it. And as we started to work on that together, now he can come in like where he used to come in and immediately get triggered, shut down, or get upset or
Get
say
cold.
something not nice. He can come in and immediately go, you have a migraine. Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? What do you need? Is there anything that you need? I love you and I'm here. And what has changed in me, which was unexpected, is I feel like, and I don't know, I think we've talked about this, but I am showing up so much better when I do have migraines. Even my ability to get out of bed and help.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think part of it that I uncovered after is I'm like, I would feel so much shame that even I couldn't process the shame and the pain at the same time. So I would get stuck and freeze.
Yep.
And just stay in bed.
You'd have
and
to
as
stay in
we've
bed.
brought, and as we've brought the stakes down, even the pain, the physical pain that I feel is way less. And my ability to cope with it is way more.
100%.
Yeah.
Which I would say the same for me. Wouldn't you say? Like my ability, because the trauma, it's like I had trauma connected to sickness and I saw all as the same thing. When I started separating the two, what is the trauma is my little girl showing up. The trauma is me feeling so out of control. Well, now instead of looping or dissociate, there's so much I had to do to survive the panic. For me, being sick would lead me into panic because I've had so many things in the past where things went on way too long or got way too intense and I didn't know how to get through it. So I would have a threat response in my body every time sickness happened where I'd go into panic. My panic would feel unsafe for you, but it would also exaggerate the stress of being panicked. Exaggerates pain. I'm not saying I don't think my pain is made up. I'm saying it makes sense if you think about your body clenching
Yeah.
versus relaxing. Even if you just think about giving birth. If you are prepared, like
Speak it, girl.
Pietze did hypnobirthing and she's like, it's going to be painful and I'm going to embrace the pain and move with it.
Well, because fear creates resistance and resistance creates pain and trauma.
Yes.
To the body and to our nervous systems, actually. And so when you actually go, hey, this is pressure and I can handle it, and you take the fear around the pain out, you actually perceive it a completely different way.
Yeah. So I started to be like, oh, my panic is one thing. My sickness is another thing. I need to take care of my panic, girl. And the more I've done that, my symptoms haven't gotten less, but they are controlling my life and dominating my life and driving my life less.
Yeah.
And then the energy it takes when I have to like, okay, I can't do that. I have to lay down instead. Oh, I can't do this. Now there's a little bit less resistance. So it doesn't create the panic like it did, which I think what we're saying is chronic sickness is horrible.
Yeah.
It's shitty. However, there's not a situation in life where you don't have control over some way
aspect.
Yes.
to be able to live well in the midst of it.
Yeah. I will add this too, because this has been chiming around in the back of my head. Something that we're collectively talking about is the idea that we're all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
oftentimes when people are in experiences like this, the loneliness, it's like there's
it's
like two
bad.
people sitting at the opposite ends of the boat, feeling like there's no one else in here with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like being in a boat in the middle of the night. You can't see the person at the other end of it. And right now the conversation is, hey, you're actually in the same boat. And when you can see that we're both scared, we're both overwhelmed, we're both in pain, we're both triggered inside of this situation, that's when compassion comes in. And what Abby's talking about, even the relief inside of her body, is that we can see that we're both in the same boat. We're not at each other. There's not the blame. There's not the accusation. There's not the bitterness. There's not the resentment, because there's self-management of these things. So there's these deep levels of connection that we're able to have in the midst of sickness and stuff like that, because it's not being exacerbated by triggers that aren't being owned.
Now,
Right.
that being said, we're talking about like we're over the hump. We are continually seeing more and more freedom and fruit. There's always triggers that come up and the thing about sickness is it takes your whole window of tolerance. So when I don't feel good, I don't have a rope. I go from green to red. There isn't a yellow.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't have yellow anymore. And my green is so thin when I'm really sick. My green is so little that it's very easy to get me out of the green zone into the red zone. And so it's going to be hard for me, and it's going to be hard for you.
Yeah.
But there is but the more I've had compassion, I understand, my window of tolerance is taken up by this. Oh, okay. Of course I'm short. And so now I can apologize fast. Oh, I'm sorry. I can tell I'm really dysregulated right now.
And we can forgive fast. We can cut each other some more breaks.
You can repair, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I will say in this whole conversation as well, and this is a practical thing that we did. This is probably one of the most passionate subjects. I could do 5 podcasts on it, and we're not going to, but the concept of busyness.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, if you find yourself in this situation, right, where you have chronic sickness in the picture, or if you find yourself in a marriage where you're fighting a lot, or you find yourself with kids that have special needs or who are struggling, any sort of thing, if you continually find yourself in a situation where you do not have capacity for a situation that seems to be on a loop, right? It seems to be reoccurring outside of your control.
Yep.
One of the ways that you can reduce your trauma is by actually creating more space in your life so it does not feel so catastrophic when things do go sideways, right? And that's been something that we've been really intent on, is we want to set up our life so that even practically it feels less high stakes when she's sick. If she wakes up with a migraine and it sidelines our life, we can actually say it's not a big deal. I'm going to pause my work. We're not going to not be able to pay the mortgage this month because I couldn't work. You know what I mean? Like the high stakes gets real bad sometimes. And you need to create space in your life for being able to love really well and not have these emotions between each other.
And like one of the ways, a practical way you guys did that, and I know we need to wrap up, is you guys saved a lot. You decided we're going to spend way less money so that we have a little bit more cushion in our savings account. And you guys went on like, we're not eating out. We're not buying new things. Like you went on like, we've
simplified a lot.
We're going to simplify so that we have a little bit extra in the bank account so that we feel less stressed. Which I think is a great practical thing. So
great management.
The whole point is pathways will change your life. Do you want to talk about that, Pietze or Jonny?
Yeah. I mean, I just will say this, like, honestly, one of the things that we talk about in pathways is how these hidden core beliefs and these identified beliefs will actually take you to destinations you weren't intending to go.
Yep.
And so until you identify them, you are steering a ship in a direction you didn't know you were steering it. Just like this story, how we didn't realize that these beliefs were creating so much trauma. And if we didn't take care of the beliefs, we just would trauma cycle. It might not be the migraine, but then the next thing that hits, we would hit the same trauma, you know? And so I feel passionate about, and I will say this because we haven't mentioned it yet with all of our parenting podcasts and everything. We have whole families that do this together.
Yes.
We have couples who do this together, and having common language and understanding around how to regulate, how to understand your emotions to get to these core beliefs that affect the relationship are game changers. And every time we have a married couple that does it together or a family that does it together, it is tremendously huge for that unit. And so, you know, everyone is welcome. And I hope that you do it because it's life changing. And we're not just saying that, it's because it's changed us and it's changed our clients.
Yeah. We've seen, I mean, the testimonies are incredible and we've lived it. We agree with it. And it's fun to get to be around you. I love getting to meet people.
Yeah.
Come hang out with us.
So fun.
Oh, you guys, what a great episode. I really hope everyone listening out there that is struggling in some way, shape, or form with what we're talking about, that you'd not feel alone.
Yeah.
That it begin the process of going like, because that's one of the greatest feelings that we can feel inside of this is alone. Like I'm all in this just to survive. No one gets it. That you'd feel that like there's actually an enormous amount of people that walk through stuff like this. And we're all feeling similar feelings, whether or not we know how to describe them or not. And that there are people here rooting you on, wanting you to win and make it through this and not just survive, but actually start thriving. So yeah, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Remember,
that's good.
Remember to share this. Like if you know people that are going through it, share it. Like
it just feels good to hear other people have the same experience.
I think even for me, while I was sitting here talking and Jonny and Pietze are sharing, there was a part of my soul where I'm like, oh, I could feel a little twinge of something that felt alone there that stopped feeling alone. Like, oh yeah, we're in this together, you know?
Yeah. And the two things that I want to say is I think both me and Pietze, the more we've learned about our bodies and our nervous system, I think we have the most hope for healing.
Yeah.
And to get out of the chronic health cycle. I mean, I do. I can say for me, I know I am going to get out of the chronic health cycle.
Yeah.
I do too. And it's been a huge shift for me in my health journey, a huge shift.
And it's because I understand why my nervous system is stuck in sickness.
Yep.
And now I don't feel blame about that, but I feel powerful to begin to transform that. And it all started by becoming aware, like through pathways. That is the beginning process for me. And so, while we have acceptance, which is like, okay, if this is where I'm at right now, that's what I call acceptance. It's not, this is what will be forever, but if this is where I'm at right now, what can I change? And then the hope of, I know the things I am changing will end up changing my whole life course.
Yeah. That's so good.
So good.
So good.
All right, everybody. Well, hey, thanks for joining us again. Remember to share this with people that need to hear something like this, and then rate, review, and subscribe.
And your last chance to sign up before 2024.
Yeah, to partake.
Yep.
So go partake.
JustinandAbby.com.
Partake.
All right. Go away, everyone. Goodbye.
I'm out.